Good morning, everyone. My name is Colleen Salmon, and I am one of the SCs on our Cisco desk here at D&H. Today, we have Nick Kelly from Cisco joining us. Hi, Nick.
Hey, how are you, Kelly?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So what are we going to talk about today?
Today we're going to talk about Cisco Umbrella and the role that DNS plays in both visibility and security for organizations both on network and off network.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Because there have been a lot of talk about Cisco Umbrella and Open DNS. So and there's a lot of confusion around that as well.
Right.
How is Cisco Umbrella different from Open DNS, and what is Cisco Umbrella?
Okay, so let's clear that up first. Okay, so Open DNS was an acquisition that Cisco made a couple of years ago, and OpenDNS.com is still up, and if you want to use it at home, you can. What that does is it provides a layer of security before you ever touch the network. Okay? So let me explain what DNS is, just so everybody gets that. So everybody probably has a phone. You have a phone?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Everybody's got a phone. Do you have a contact list on your phone?
Yes.
Do you have everybody's phone number memorized?
No.
That's how DNS works. So what happens, you go onto the World Wide Web and you type in a domain and you domain.com, and every DNS provider on the planet will come back with the number that corresponds with that, right? So you don't have to memorize every IP address that's out. Nobody can do it.
Okay.
I know some really smart people, nobody can memorize every IP address in the world. But what we do that's a little differently is when we look up that domain and we give you the IP address, we also give you everything we know about that from a security standpoint. So that means, is it associated with any type of malware campaign, phishing campaign, command and control, any of the security categories that we would want to have, so that you can, by policy, make a decision whether or not your users are allowed to go there.
Wow, all of that information in one product. So where does Cisco Umbrella fit into the security ecosystem?
So that's one of my favorite things about Umbrella, is that about 5-10 years ago, whenever somebody said Cisco security, what that meant was we were going to come in and we were going to give you an appliance. And that's all we knew. Like, everybody knows Cisco is a networking company, and so security as it applies to the network. But what this does is it's just sending back the answer to your question about where am I going and what do I know about that particular domain. So we don't care about any hardware that you have. So if you love whatever other hardware that you have, you don't have to rip and replace anything, right? So it sits basically as the first point of visibility. And I say visibility because you probably heard me say it 1,000 times. Every security tool is a visibility tool, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to know, before we can make a decision on anything, what we know about that particular domain. So what happens is, this actually sits as the very first layer outside of the network. So you don't actually have to put in any gear. All you're doing is you're telling your network gear to send your request to us, and we'll come back with the security information. Now, we do that for network deployments, but we also do that for branch deployments, and we also do that for end user devices that are off the network. So you have parallel policy enforcement, whether they're at a Starbucks or whether they're sitting at their desk.
Okay, so we are protecting users on and off premise with Cisco Umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So just to get an idea and put it together for our partners, we have the network security where we would implement the ASAs and firepower services.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have AnyConnect services, which is our VPN.
Right.
We work on and off prem. So Umbrella would kind of sit in that spectrum where it would protect you. And are you able to utilize it on any device?
So almost on any device, right? So if you're on the network, you're going to get protected because when you send your requests, you have network devices that are going to handle those requests, and then they're going to redirect to us.
Yes.
When you're off network, we can actually protect your laptops. We can also protect iOS devices with the Cisco Security Connector, and also Chromebooks.
Okay.
So those are the things we can protect at the moment. In terms of where it sits in the stack, I like to basically say this is the bouncer, right? So think about when we send a request out, we're getting basically, is this a good domain or a bad domain? If we really, really simplify it to that. And all you're doing is, that's the bouncer. Are you on the list or are you not on the list, right?
Okay.
Which helps, because when we talk about network security gear, we're talking about access control lists, intrusion policies, all these things that require tuning and to an extent require a lot of process power. This is just, it's very, very simple. Are you on the list or not on the list? Let's start with simple first.
Okay. And all of this sits in the cloud. This is cloud licensing.
Right. We actually, if you go to system.opendns.com, you can see all of the different data centers that we have that handle these requests and how long they've been up. We've actually handled over 200 trillion requests since OpenDNS was first launched, yeah.
And how easy is Cisco Umbrella to deploy?
So that's the beauty. So we can deploy on network. It's very, very as simple as looking up whatismyip.com. to get your public-facing IP address. You have to know if it's static or dynamic, but that's a little in the weeds. Redirect with a script that you just deploy for DNS queries to our IP space. And then for off-network devices, we actually have a roaming client, or we can deploy through the AnyConnect as a module that you're probably already using for VPN handling. So
in the perspective of time, because a lot of our partners, they're used to configuring an ASA, which can be time consuming. How easy and how time consuming is Cisco Umbrella to set up users? And
we deployed across Cisco, across 130,000 nodes in under 4 hours.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. This
is a phenomenal product.
Do you want to see how we deploy it?
Absolutely. All
right, cool. Let's take a look. Okay, so we talked about how easy it is to deploy. Like I said, we did 130,000 nodes inside of Cisco within 4 hours, okay? And we work with huge companies all the time, and we also work with mom and pop shops too.
Okay.
So if you're looking at deploying Umbrella for your actual network, it's pretty simple, a couple steps. You're gonna define the network and you're gonna give it a name, obviously. You're gonna look at the public-facing IP address. You can do that through whatismyip.com. You're gonna assign a policy, and then once that policy is put into place, you'll get your little green checkbox for active policy, right? And you can see, like in this case, if I was looking for this particular computer, there's your public-facing IP address. Now, what's just as important for a lot of shops are users who are off the network, right?
Absolutely.
I'm a road warrior. I'm typically not on a Cisco network. I'm usually out and about, sometimes here with you guys.
No one's typically tethered to their desk anymore.
That's right, yeah. The crunchy shell model of security that we used to have years ago. So in this case, we're looking at roaming computers. Now, we talked about protecting laptops, right? So one of the first things that we can do is we can look at, here's your Windows client, and you can see which operating systems are supported, right?
Here's good. We have a wide range of protection for everyone.
Right, exactly. Now, Mac OS, of course, right, for those of us who are Mac people. I only have one Windows box left in the house. It's my son's gaming box. And then also AnyConnect as a module. Now, AnyConnect is typically used by organizations as a VPN client. Right?
Absolutely. We have a lot of users utilizing AnyConnect.
Right. So what we can do inside of Cisco Security is actually we can use AnyConnect for a couple different things. So we can deploy Umbrella, and the way that works is if I have AnyConnect installed and I'm on the network, that Umbrella piece will turn off because I'm on a trusted network.
Okay.
If I am off the network and I'm on the road somewhere, coffee shop, whatever, then it actually turns on the Umbrella protection. So it again redirects the DNS requests to the Cisco Umbrella.
So you get that protection off-prem immediately.
Exactly. It knows if you're on a trusted network or not. The other thing that we can do, as you can see here, is we can also protect mobile devices. So this would be through the Cisco Security Connector, and then also Chromebook. So a lot of schools that use Chromebook, whether they rent those out to the students or they send the card out and the kids get them just for that period. So we can actually redirect the traffic to our Umbrella platform there too.
That is great news because we do have a lot of K through 12 partners that are looking for something, a security platform this specific.
Without being a huge agent or without being really invasive, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so that's deployment. So now let's talk about, when we looked at that network, we looked at policy, right? So let's talk a little bit about what actually is encompassed inside of a policy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look at our policies. Now, the very first thing that you can see here is we have a bunch of different policies. We've got Chromebook, application, mobile devices, etc. The way that we handle policies, this is important if you're configuring something, is if a domain fires off on a policy, it's not going to keep looking for it, right?
Okay.
Top down.
Yes.
So one of the things that we have is the ability to say, okay, I put this user or this domain or this IP or this category, or now I'll show you the different things inside of policy, but we actually have a thing called a policy tester. And what that does for us is if I've put something into a policy, it tells me which policy. So if I have, let's say down here we've got a bypass policy, and I'm thinking I need to bypass this particular domain because we think this is okay, but I've already blocked it under a mobile device policy, it'll never get to this bypass policy, right?
Okay.
Okay, so what are the things that we can actually handle inside of a policy? So in this case, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at who we're going to protect. We can do that through users, we can do that through devices, we can do that through there's a number of networks, right? There's a number of different things that we can do here. In this case, let's just select our networks. What are we going to do? Now, there's a couple different things. Obviously, we want to enforce security at the DNS layer. That's the wheelhouse of what we do. Again, we get the visibility and the policy enforcement at the DNS layer, which a lot of people don't have. It's a blind spot, right? So for your customers, you need to ask them, do you have visibility into the DNS layer? Even before it's even a security conversation, do you know which websites your users are going to, right? That's the first thing.
Oh, absolutely. Visibility is a must in networks nowadays.
Right. Then we can look at content, we can look at applications, we can look at destination lists. I'll tell you what those look like in a second. And then we can do things like enforce safe search. So if you want to do for Yahoo, Bing, and Google, you want to make sure that anybody who's doing a search online actually has the safe search configured, we can do that. Okay, so that's the first page there. The second thing is we're going to get into security categories. Now, security categories are different from user behavior categories for obvious reasons, right? So from a security perspective, these are pretty much what we're always going to have turned on. Now, by default, you can see malware, command and control, phishing, but we're also going to look at things like crypto mining, right, which is a new category, or newly seen domains that get spun up, or potentially harmful domains. On the back end, we do some really interesting things like domain-generated algorithms, and we do things like co-occurrences. So if 50% of the time I see this bad domain, I also see this other one that I don't know about, maybe we want to make that association, right? So there's a lot of things that we can do there. We can integrate with a lot of other security intelligence platforms to bring in more intelligence that we may not have. So that's an integration point that we can do. From a content blocking perspective, you can see here we've got low, medium, or high, and custom. We can actually do different categories in addition to doing individual websites or individual domains. So we may say for a particular user group, we don't want them going to anything that's associated with alcohol, drugs, games, etc., and then apply that to this particular policy. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at applications. Now, we looked at security categories, we looked at websites, now we're going to look at what applications are in use. This is a pretty cool feature set that we have. This is actually a place where the Umbrella acquisition as well as the CloudLock acquisition, which was another one that we did with Cisco right after that, come into play. So in here we can actually categorize applications and say, give them a risk score, prove that they are signed by the manufacturer, and then allow the organization to approve or disapprove by policy those applications. Okay? Now I'll show you a use case for that here in just a second. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to look at destination lists. By default, we have a global allow or deny list, a global whitelist or global blacklist, if you will, right? Places that we know everybody should be able to go or not go. But we can actually get more granular. So if, let's say, I don't know what you'd have, let everybody go. Well, this is a block policy for fantasy football. Typically what we see is we'll see the IT staff are the only folks who are allowed to go to certain websites, maybe let's say for pen testing tools and things like that, right? But we don't want everybody. We definitely don't want Becky in accounting going to get pen testing tools. Probably not.
Probably not.
The last thing that we have is we've got a block page. So we can, by default, have a page that says, okay, we're just going to pop this up and say you're not allowed to go here. Umbrella stopped you from going. Or we can customize that. Or we can do these things called bypass users and bypass codes. Okay. Right? So what that allows us to do is it allows us to track the fact that this particular domain is blocked by policy, but we give the user the opportunity to go there anyway, but with an opt-through. And then that way we track that from an auditing perspective, right? So we know that they're bypassing a policy. We give them a little warning that says, hey, Mr. User, you can go to this website, but we know you're going to this website. I don't know if you're, just know that we are Big Brother's aware. Watching you, right?
We are aware. Yeah,
it's even in the labs for this, actually, funny enough, the end user is George Orwell. And so here's where our policy summary is. This is everything that we've configured inside of that policy. And then we would hit save and then apply that to the appropriate groups.
So in terms of setting up these policies, I know a lot of questions from most of our partners when they start enabling all of these services onto the network, how is latency accounted for? How much latency does this?
It's a great question. So we're actually, in North America, we're actually the second fastest DNS provider. We actually track that very, very closely. If you want the history of OpenDNS was founded by Dave Yulovich, and the whole goal was for his gaming platform to be faster, right? So we have a technology that we call Anycast. It's not necessarily the shortest geographical distance, but it's based on the amount of latency that it would take to get to one of the now 32 data centers that we have across the globe. So you're not going to get any latency in terms of performance. That's of course, right? That's the biggest thing in security is always how's it going to impact my users, right? So we want to make sure that we're not doing that.
We want to make sure that we're getting that throughput and that service that we're paying for. So absolutely.
Yeah, we want to maximize the visibility, allow you to enforce policy as quickly as possible, and then not have any business impact, right? That's really, I mean, in security, we measure everything in time, right? How quickly can we discover something? How quickly can we prevent it? How quickly can we see that it's evolved? So everything inside of security is based on time, right?
Absolutely. So this product fits into a lean IT space where you don't have the staffing to monitor and run reports all day.
Right, and also how quickly are you protected? So one of the things that we've introduced in Cisco is what we call this concept of see it once, protect everywhere, right? So because the domain information exists in the cloud, and with our advanced malware protection, the malicious disposition information exists in the cloud, anybody who sees that file has fed the cloud, right? So once we know something is bad, from that point forward, everybody's protected. So you don't, as the many hats person in your organization, your mom and pop shop, where you're the security person, but you're also the email person, and you're also the server person, and you're also the VMware person, and you're also like all those different things. You don't have to push updates down. You don't have to get the latest, greatest version, all that, because everything is in the cloud. As long as you have the network configured correctly, and as long as you have the connectors speaking to the cloud, then you're already protected, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. So the last piece that we wanted to talk about was the applications. I mentioned during our policy that we were looking at application discovery. And what we do with application discovery is really interesting because what we used to do was just see which applications were used and just provide it as a report, but there wasn't really any action that you could take. So now what we've done with application discovery is we've provided a risk score, community risk score. We've categorized all the applications, and for every organization, they can decide whether things are good or bad. That could be a security conversation. It could be something completely outside of a security conversation, right? So if we look at even the ones that we have up here. So we've got anonymizers, right? Those are to bypass security controls, probably pretty high risk, right?
Pretty high risk.
Peer-to-peer, may not want to allow that because typically that's a way for malware to propagate very quickly. But something like games, right? So maybe games are just a time waster and we want to apply those to certain folks. Or social media, right? Maybe we just want the marketing department to get to social media so that they can post the latest, greatest.
Post the latest and greatest.
Right. But one of the things we can do here is we can actually have approval or disapproval by the actual customer, right? By the actual organization. Now, as I mentioned, maybe this is not a security conversation, but maybe it's a policy conversation. So again, visibility tool. If I know as a company that we've spent a bunch of money investing in a collaboration platform, something like Box, something like OneDrive, right? Those types of things. But I see that I have users who are still going to something like Dropbox. I need to maybe have a conversation with them. Right?
Absolutely.
It may not be corporate intellectual property, but at the same time, that's not what we've decided. We've sanctioned as an organization, right? So a couple of different things we can do there. I'll just drill down here in the games real quick and just show you the type of visibility that we have. So you can see the different types of applications that are approved, what we've got from a risk score, how many people are requesting those particular sites, and then how many total domain requests, and then what is the status. Are they reviewed, unreviewed, and then if we want to block them, we can just simply do that with a click of a button. Okay?
One-stop shop.
One-stop shop, exactly. Now, the last other thing that we talked about in addition to application control and discovery was we wanted to talk about how Umbrella fits into some of the other places inside of the Cisco security portfolio. right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the easiest places where we fit is with the Meraki. Okay, so Meraki MR devices, which are wireless access points, right, can take policies, any of the policies that we've created inside of Cisco Umbrella. Remember, we go back to all those policies that we looked at. We had bypass policies and mobile device policies and all those different things. So any policies that we create inside of Umbrella, we can actually populate into the MR devices. Okay, why is that useful? Well, let's go to the easiest use case that I can give you. Once they're populated into Meraki, we can look at applying them at the user level, at the group level, or we can apply them by SSID. Okay, so let's say I'm a hospital and I want to have a policy that's pretty stringent for my doctors and my nurses, my clinicians. I want to say, for those folks, we want to protect all the security categories that we looked at: malware, command and control, phishing, crypto mining, newly seen domains, all the other different things that are in there. Mm-hmm. And I want to make sure that they're doing their jobs. So maybe I block all those games. Maybe I block all the different categories that are associated with some of the user behavior, time waster type of things. Mm-hmm. But I have guest Wi-Fi. I have people coming in the hospital who don't work in the hospital all the time, right? So if it's just Junior visiting grandma, I definitely want to keep all the security policies in place, but do I care if he's gaming on his phone?
Exactly. You want to keep Junior occupied.
Yes, you do. Well, right. Otherwise, it's a hot mess. So we can just apply those different policies by SID. The guest Wi-Fi, still protected from a security perspective, but they're still allowed to do all the things that we would consider time wasters, games, social media, that type of stuff.
Wow. That is remarkable. The visibility in this product is amazing. And all of these products combined. So I know Cisco's messaging is the layered security approach. Mm-hmm. So you have everything talking to one another so you don't miss any important information that is going on within your network.
Right.
So how does Umbrella talk to the network in terms of the ASA and that information that correlates with
Great question. So one of the very first things that we did as Cisco when we closed the OpenDNS acquisition was we actually had the two databases talk to each other. So in the cloud, again, I talked about everything's in the cloud. I love the cloud. I'm sorry, I love the cloud.
We love the cloud.
So we had the domain information that was populated in Umbrella. So we know domains, IPs, and URLs. And then we had the URL information, right? So we could say if this was a bad site or not.
Yes.
Inside of the advanced malware protection database, we knew if these files were malicious or not. So what we could do is we could say if this file's malicious and it's talking to a domain that Umbrella hadn't seen before, add that domain to Umbrella. If vice versa, if we saw a domain that was hosting malware and that malware wasn't listed inside of AMP previously, we just pollinated that. And now again, there's nothing to push down to the devices. So anytime somebody saw that domain, they were protected. Anytime somebody saw that file is listed as malware, they were protected. So a lot of cross-pollination of data just that happened. And I can tell you, from having customers who used one or the other, but not both, that they saw increased protection. So one thing I have to mention, otherwise they beat me, is everything's done through Talos. Talos is the culmination of all of the different security intelligence teams that we've acquired or developed over time, right? And so Talos is essentially about 300 researchers, engineers, and analysts who all they do is they take everything that we see as Cisco and they turn that into actionable intelligence inside of the products, right? So we were talking about how AMP and Umbrella talk to each other, right? The easy example is that we can see something anywhere on the planet and we turn that into a snort rule or a malware disposition or a domain inside of Umbrella, et cetera. But it's all done through this group called Talos. If you want more information, you can go to talosintelligence.com.
And is Cisco Talos an added subscription, or is that a service that comes with all of the security products? Okay,
so Talos. So Talos is not a product, and it is not an acronym. Actually, go read your Greek mythology. It actually is, that's a thing. And then the third thing is, think of it as it's the intellectual fuel that powers all the engines inside of the Cisco security portfolio.
So the
everything
secret
talks
sauce.
to Talos. Exactly, the secret sauce. Everything talks to Talos. Now, about Umbrella, let's recap what we talked about with Umbrella, right? So the first thing is, it's the first layer of visibility, which then allows us to enforce policy and become security, right? So regardless of what hardware you have in place, you can use Umbrella.
Where it fits into the security ecosystem.
Right. We always call it the first layer of defense, the outer skin of the onion, if you will, right? The second thing is how easy it is to deploy, right? So Windows, Mac, iOS devices, Chromebook, and through the AnyConnect module.
Security for everyone.
Right, on network or off network, very, very important, right? You don't only protect your laptop when you're in the office. You wouldn't go home and turn off all your security settings. It would be crazy.
Absolutely. We'll hang out in Panera and Starbucks all day.
The third thing is policy. So we looked at being able to do security enforcement, content blocking, application enforcement, and even something as important as safe search, right? So we looked at the different areas of policy that we could cover and how you could assign those. And then the last thing we looked at was application discovery, which applications are in use in the organization and allowing the customer to actually audit those, approve those, or block those, right?
And with all those services, the most important, no latency.
No latency, yes. Anycast allows us to be fast while we're actually providing visibility and security to the customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining us. And thank you, everyone. Once again, my name is Colleen Salmon. If you have any additional questions, please contact at Cisco's support at D&H.com. And stay tuned for the live Q&A after this session.